Hello everyone, my name is Jocelyn, you may call me Joy, and in this video I'm going to be talking about something that's sort of a uncomfortable topic, so I've decided to try and make this as relaxed an atmosphere as possible. So a couple of times now I've noticed YouTubers talking about anxiety attacks and panic attacks and using those terms interchangeably, which they shouldn't really have been doing. One of them from several years ago now actually made a follow-up video after receiving some feedback from their audience and apologised for confusing the two things together. What they were relating was they were saying the word panic attack, but they're describing the symptoms of an anxiety attack. This is why it's important not to confuse or conflate the two, because it helps to clarify what a person means when they are saying one of these two things. Also, it's just being correct for the sake of clarity when communicating to, say, for example, a medical professional. Mixing up these terms is misleading for everyone. So let's have a look. The symptoms I have looked up are on medicalnewstoday.com, just to sort of make sure that I didn't forget anything or mix anything up myself. Essentially, they both have the capacity to cause an elevated heart rate, shallowness of breathing, and a sense of distress. And that's, with these similarities, it's understandable why people would make the mistake that these two terms are interchangeable when they're not. I'm going to go into more details about my own personal experiences with these, so bear with me. Generally speaking, and these are all going to be generalized symptoms of things that may occur, because you might find that in one particular anxiety attack you experience symptoms A, B, C, but not D. Anxiety attacks are a response to a perceived threat or distress. They're usually part of an ongoing mental health condition as well, such as anxiety disorder or depression. They tend to occur as a trauma response, that is to say, some sort of external stressor has brought about the anxiety attack. They usually have a gradual build-up of mild to severe symptoms, and they also tend to be much longer term than panic attacks, lasting for days, weeks, or even months. The symptoms being nervousness, irritability, trembling, a sense of impending danger, difficulty concentrating, and can also lead to or be caused by disturbed sleep. Panic attacks, on the other hand, which I also have experience with, are for the most part much more intense than anxiety attacks. They can occur with or without some sort of trigger. They usually occur quite suddenly, without a build-up. They are disruptive and can make a person feel detached from their situation rather than in the middle of a situation. The better news with panic attacks is that they tend to last a lot shorter amount of time, anywhere between 5 minutes to half an hour. The severity of the symptoms, however, is much, much greater. These can include chest pains, dizziness, hot flashes or cold flashes, nausea, numbness or tingling of limbs and extremities, stomach pains, sweats, and an involvement of a feeling of loss of control and also an overwhelming fear of death. Both anxiety attacks and panic attacks can be caused by underlying reasons. This is usually environmental stressors, some sort of chemical imbalance, like with taking drugs or withdrawal from drugs or alcohol, or the side effects of certain medications as well. Certain chronic conditions, chronic pains, phobias, trauma triggers, all can be the underlying sort of features here. And there's no real one way to tell how a particular stressor or trigger will cause somebody to go into an anxiety attack versus a panic attack. That's just how that person's body and mind responds at that particular time. You can't really control these things. Interestingly, while I was doing this research, I found a couple of statistics that studies have shown LGBTQ plus youths are approximately twice as likely as their peers to suffer from anxiety attacks or panic attacks. And women are twice as likely as men to develop an anxiety disorder. This really speaks to the phenomenon known as minority stress, which again is an environmental factor, that is to say, a societal one, where people who are in a minority or treated differently for whatever reason are treated so badly that it affects their mental health. Okay, so this is the part where I tell you my own personal experiences with these two things. I'll start with the anxiety attacks because those are the most recent. While I was at work in the job that I quit back in September, I started to get anxiety attacks while I was working. You understand why I had to quit, because I was not capable of working and having anxiety attacks at the same time. These were caused by the amount of stress I had to deal with at work, the amount of people that I had to sort of deal with their needs at work, with very little in the way of backup. Like, backup was there sometimes, but it wasn't enough for me to be able to cope. So I would be there feeling these, like, for me personally, my symptoms were the for me, the symptoms were that I would feel very on edge, unable to sort of concentrate on what other people were doing or needing, because suddenly I had to deal with this internal feeling going on. I was shaky, I felt dizzy spells, I've just remembered, I had to work whilst concealing, masking all of these symptoms as well. That was super fucking unhealthy. I just felt unable to concentrate on what I was doing, which is super unhealthy, being forced into that. So I had no choice. I had to quit. Because if I had stayed there for any longer, the symptoms would have just continued to get worse and more prolonged. The reason I know that this was an anxiety attack and not a panic attack is because I have experience with those too. When I was much younger, in my early 20s, I used to take a lot of drugs. And it got to the point where I was abusing drugs and cannabis so much that if I so much as touch weed now, I'm terrified. Like, I'm okay if other people are smoking nearby. I don't like it, but it's fine. But there is a reason why I quit back when I was, 23 years old. And that's because I would do it and then feel a complete wreck afterwards. I was crawling, well, barely even moving, on the floor, unable to move, pale as a sheet, racing heart rate, not just elevated, but racing. And I thought I was genuinely, the first time it happened, I thought, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack and I'm going to die from this. That is a panic attack, and it is one of the scariest things. After I stopped with the drugs and the cannabis, I haven't had a panic attack since, God, I think I had one a couple of years later, and then that was it. And that would have been about 10-ish years ago. It's better to know exactly what's going on. Understanding the difference between these two types of attacks, generally speaking, is just better to know the difference, because you don't want to be inaccurate or misleading, especially in sort of a medical term, when, for example, somebody is having one of these attacks and you need to relay that information to a paramedic or somebody like that. Usually, allowing a person who is having an anxiety attack the chance to sit down quietly and relax as best they can is the ideal solution. With panic attacks, it might take a bit more. It might even take medication to cancel out the panic that's going on in that person's brain. That's one of the things that helped me. Quitting drugs was the biggest factor of helping me stop having panic attacks. And again, this is why I do not touch anything now, because I don't want to end up like that crumpled mess on the floor again. If it's not fun, why bother doing it anymore? And that's how it was for me. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you've learned something, and I will see you very soon. Bye. Let's just start from the beginning. Fuck it. It's gonna be one of those videos, isn't it? Fun.